Hi guys, welcome to Cryptids Canada. Hope everybody's having a great Friday so far. Before I get started, guys, I could use your stories. I would be ever so appreciative. Also, if you would give me a like, a share, and even subscribe if you really like the video, I would appreciate that as well. So I'm gonna stop with the jibber jabber and just get right to it. This story is titled Two Adventures from 1970. I think those are the best stories, those older ones, eh? Okay, let's just get to it. Hello, Leslie. My name is Steve. I am from Washington State, and I hope I can save you from having to read the phone book. Well, I sure hope you can too, because if it keeps going the way it is, I'm starting the A's in a few days. Okay, so then he goes on to say, these two camping experiences are from 1970 when I was 15 years old. The first experience I'll call camping on Lake Superior. My parents bought a new Chevy pickup and an open road brand pickup camper. School was out for the summer and my parents wanted to camp in every state west of the Mississippi. The trip consisted of my mom, my dad, and me. My mother's relatives lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and every year we would either camp there or they would come out to Washington State and we would camp here. My father was disabled and had an artificial leg. He could drive and get around and do many things. My dad was grateful that we had a camper and we wouldn't have to sleep on the ground in a tent this particular year. Unfortunately, the campground that was picked for us to camp at was only available to access by boat down a small river. So it meant that we would have to sleep in a tent, and my dad was not happy about that. He would have had to take his artificial leg off at night when he slept on the ground. We were in one of those 9 by 9 foot canvas umbrella type tents that was pitched in the middle of a game trail. There was underbrush on either side of the tent. It barely fit in there. That's what happens when you're the last person at the campsite. This location was picked because this particular river emptied into Lake Superior and fishing was the reason for this camping trip. The fishing was good and the days went by fast. Due to bears being in the area, someone had to stay up at night with a shotgun and guard the camp. This job fell to my Uncle Ray to do. The first night we camped there, my parents and I were in the tent, and about midnight, my dad wakes me up and says, "Can you hear something coming this way?" Sure enough, I could hear something. It was going through the underbrush on the side of the game trail, and it sounds like it was dragging a chain. There was an occasional clanking sound. Uncle Ray, who had been on guard duty, was drinking schnapps and had passed out with the gun in his lap. My dad desperately tried to wake him, saying, "Ray, Ray, Ray," somewhat quietly. He didn't want to shout loudly and scare him because he was passed out with the shotgun on his lap. Whatever it was coming through the underbrush on my side of the tent. It was making heavy footfalls and crashing through the underbrush. My dad felt totally helpless because his leg was off, and Uncle Ray had the only gun and he was sound asleep snoring. I really had no idea what to do if it was a bear. I was only 15. Tried to figure out what it was. It just didn't make any sense that it was a bear. I thought maybe it was a dog or a wolf or something that had chained up and got loose. It was the first time in my life I'd realized whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I accepted not knowing what was going on and hoped for the best. Pretty soon this creature came crashing around the tent to where Uncle Ray was sleeping with the shotgun and loudly mooed at Uncle Ray, and then shook its cowbell. Apparently, we weren't on a game trail, but a cattle trail where cows went down to the river to drink. We were all relieved and got a big laugh out of it, but my dad was still really mad at Uncle Ray. By the way, my mother slept through it all, not knowing what was going on until the next morning. My second experience I'll call Mystery Lights in the Woods. After we returned to Washington State, I hooked up with my friends who were going on camping outings in the woods a few miles from my parents' home. There were 5 of us, and we were camping under the stars. It was August, and the Perseid meteor shower was very active. It was beautiful. My friends had put this campsite together while I was back in Michigan, and they had not camped there yet. This would be their first time. I asked my dad if I could go with them, and he said I needed to bring a gun with me to protect us from the wildlife that might do us harm. I told him that my friend Tim had brought his .22 rifle with him, and he said, "That's not much protection. I would be happier if you brought a shotgun." I was already overloaded with what I was carrying into the woods and told Dad I really couldn't carry a gun, so I left it at that. Because I was the last person at the campsite under the stars, I ended up sleeping on the ground on the side of the campsite area. We were camped along this creek, and we had a great time there. There was a fossil bed with trilobite fossils, and there was trout in the creek also. This was my first time at this campsite, so I was unfamiliar with the surrounding area. It was about 11 at night, and I was looking up the creek bed about 150 feet, and I saw what looked like the back porch of a house with windows that was lit with several yard lights. We were talking and listening to a radio, and I asked my friends, "Whose house is that?" I didn't think we were that close to any houses. They thought I was crazy, and they said, "There's no houses within 2 miles of us." I said, "Yes, there is. Don't you see those lights?" One by one, my friends came around to where I was sleeping and saw the lights. To say that we were scared was an understatement. We realized that these lights were in the woods, and there were no houses around anywhere. We decided that someone had to go and investigate these lights, and since Tim was the one that brought a .22 rifle, he was elected. He wasn't happy about it, but he was elected, so the only thing the rest of us had was cheapo survival knives. We got those out really quickly. So Tim went out slowly with his .22 rifle drawn facing the lights. I have to say this again, we were a bunch of scared kids. Tim slowly made his way to where the lights were, and he shouted back at us, "It's the trees." Now, we were really confused. How could it be the trees? He shouted for us to come up. It was okay. What it was a grove of birch trees along the creek bank. These trees had absorbed phosphorus from the soil, and where the bark was gone from the trees would glow. What I thought was a pane of glass was a birch tree where the bark was gone all around the tree. What I thought was yard lights were small areas on the birch trees where the bark had peeled away. These trees were a couple 100 feet downstream from the fossil beds, and perhaps phosphorus from the fossils is what leached into the trees. One of my friends saved a piece of one of those trees, and if he got it wet at night, it would glow. There are strange things on this planet that we don't understand. This is definitely one of them for 5 scared teenagers. I talked with the park ranger several years later, and he said, yes, this is something that does happen from time to time, and it's probably more common than most people think. I live in Washington State, and I have anecdotal experiences with Bigfoot sounds and smells. And I live near a place called Growler's Gulch, named after sounds coming from the area. If you're interested, I can give you more details on that. But in the meantime, I hope these 2 humorous stories saved you from having to read the phone book. Thank you and God bless. No, thank you and God bless you, my dear. That was a pretty cool story, and boy, oh boy, does it ever show you how simple little things are not always Bigfoot. It would be nice if it was, but it's not always Bigfoot. Sometimes things are just natural occurrences that happen in the wild. But hold on tight, guys. I've got another story for you. Hi, Leslie. My name is Louis, and I'm a Mexican-American living in Colorado. Now, the reason I say this is so that you know that my culture is descendants from the mighty Aztec and Maya. We are a part of the First Nations and have stories and wives' tales and fables to explain all of these paranormal phenomena. So, here's the tale of La Llorona. Now, a long time ago, it is said that a woman, so overcome with jealousy and rage, drowned and dismembered her children in the nearby river. and is cursed to wander the waterways to recover them. And that is why you hear crying in all these stories that are heard out there. It's our way to explain the Sasquatch phenomena. Now, it's said that she takes children to replace hers and is attracted to children crying and making noises, especially at night. Most parents of our culture tell their children the stories to keep them quiet, and you know the wives' tales. Now, here is my first encounter that is back in the late 70s. I must have been around 7 or 8, and we were living with my grandmother at the time. One evening around 11, my grandmother had asked for a snack. So me and my younger sister made our way to the kitchen, and as children, we made a lot of noise. So, while looking in the fridge, we heard tapping on the window. Now, the kitchen window has one of those curtains that has a split in the middle. So I opened it, and there was a face looking in. It was huge, I remember. It had a beard and long hair. It pushed its face up against the window, and that's when we cried out. It was so scary that I thought it was the devil. So we ran back to the rooms crying and told my parents. My father got dressed and looked around the house. Found nothing. They tried to say it must have been a neighbor, but it wasn't. I know I seen it. I looked it right in the eyes. I recently went back and I measured, and that thing had to be at least 8 feet tall. And after listening to you and Steve at How to Hunt, and all the stories shared, I now know it was a Sasquatch. I have a couple more stories that I'll share with you later, and thank you for doing what you're doing. You know what? You're welcome. And I hear that a lot from you guys thanking me for doing what I'm doing. But to be quite honest, I'm doing what I'm doing because you guys are sending in the stories to me. My whole idea was to help you guys through what you're going through, or just simply a place for you guys to, tell your story. So I thank you back for that. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to be it. As I mentioned, I am very, very short on stories, so it would be wonderful if you guys could send some in. So I think that's going to be it, guys. I enjoyed my afternoon with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed your day with me too. So I hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you back here in a couple of days. Bye for now.